I believe that imagination and visualization are two faculties of genius. We actually teach that in the Silva Method since 1966. Why is that? Well, first, let's take a look at the difference. There is a distinctive difference, although they work hand in hand, difference between imagination and visualization. So, for example, and you know this, imagination would be the act, the thought of making something up, to consider something that you've not done before, to imagine being in another part of the world that you've never traveled to imagine being a person that you'd like to be, although that's not the way you are now. Imagine yourself being free of some habits that no longer serve your highest good. Visualization, on the other hand, back part of the brain controls vision, eyesight, recognition of form. It is the act of a picture, if you will. Some have called it the holographic brain of what you imagined. So the two really go hand in hand, and it works very quickly, of course. Imagination, again, the act of making it up, thinking of something, considering a possibility, and visualization, recalling and picturing it. Although, again, there are different levels of skill when it comes to visualization. Now, why is this important to understand? And I want to offer you some takeaways and some tips about this. I've been teaching the Silva Method since 1971, and we often think of it as the power of creative imagination. So, for example, if you would like to improve, enhance your self-improvement skills, if you would like to enhance, improve upon your co-creation, or some call it your manifestation skills, this is necessary, not just important, necessary. There's a famous quote, you may remember it. Everybody uses it in the abbreviated form. It's from Napoleon Hill. In fact, if you want to take a screenshot of this, you can. You can be anything you want to be if only you can believe with sufficient conviction and act in accordance with your faith. And by faith, we mean having the confidence that somehow, some way you can figure it out or be guided with your faith for whatever the mind, and here's the key, can conceive and believe the mind can achieve. So let's take a look at that. And you may have noticed that I have highlighted, bolded, can conceive and believe. Again, say it again. Can conceive and believe the mind can achieve. Simply put, conceive is another way of saying whatever you can imagine, consider as a possibility. Allow me to give you an example. Many years ago, in the early 70s, I had the good fortune. Jose Silva was my mentor, my friend. I'm the guy he selected in 1984 to train new instructors, to travel the world offering graduate advanced programs. Such an honor, such a blessing, still to this day. At the time, there were only 4 of us in the world, and Mr. Silva, the founder, was one of them. And as I traveled around, one of the people I got to meet was Dr. O. Carl Simonton, the late oncologist, who really was a pioneer and probably, at least in my opinion, revolutionized how we treat cancer, holistically speaking. He, as an oncologist, of course, was using radiation therapy. He was also using psychotherapy through his wife, Stephanie, at the time. He was also using good nutrition. When he took the Silva Method program, and back then we called it the Basic Lecture Series, it's a 4-day training, not 2 days, not 3 days, not 12 hours, but 4 full days from 9 in the morning till 7 at night. A little over 40 hours of actual training. Anyway, he went through that program and he was so impressed with what we now call dynamic meditation that he began to teach his patients. And he found that if we bring them into a relaxed state that's become identified as changing your brain waves into an alpha and theta state, they felt good. It helped to ease much of the pain and the discomfort. And then he started applying a technique that's very famous we teach in the Silva Method. Nowadays we call it Silva Life and Intuition System, Mirror the Mind. And he would imagine while they're in this quiet, relaxed state, it's a super learning state when your brainwaves slow down into this alpha and theta state. And he would ask them to imagine, to visualize themselves free of cancer, to be healthy and vibrant. And at first, can you guess what was the response of the patients? You guessed it. They couldn't do it. It was too much. It was inconceivable. Especially back then in the early 70s, cancer was the big C, and we knew much less. Medical science has come a long way. They just couldn't conceive of that possibility. So he thought about it, and he started using what we'll call creative imagination. He said, well, can you imagine this? Have you ever seen a war movie? A movie about war? Oh yeah, most have. Well, can you imagine it's as if in your body you have soldiers dressed in red and a group of soldiers dressed in white. Think of the symbology. The red symbolizing what? Cancer cells, red blood cells, which are reproducing at an alarmingly fast rate. The white, soldiers dressed in white, symbolic of the white cells, which they need more of to maintain their balance. So they could play this game and they imagine a little war game going on in their body and imagine that the soldiers dressed in white were overpowering those in red. I know it sounds ridiculous. It even sounds flaky at first. But we know, thanks to a lot of science going on over the decades now, especially now in neuroscience, that they were what? Mentally rehearsing. They were imagining the possibilities of their body and in a way that they could more easily digest and believe in. They were doing it in little baby steps. Another somewhat silly visualization was imagine in your body there are chunks of red cheddar cheese and little white mice crawling through your body, nibbling away. For some, that would be a disgusting thought. But those who did it, he found that they started improving, and he was so impressed. In 1974, I was the director at the time. I went to school in Boston University, and I was just finishing up, and I was the director of the graduate organization, and we had sponsored Dr. Simonton to give a presentation at our international convention in downtown Boston at the Heinz Auditorium. And he told his comment, he said, although he's using radiation, chemotherapy, psychotherapy, nutrition, all those are important, but he felt he was making more progress, more substantial progress in helping the patient to heal and recover and eliminate the cancer, bring the body back to balance by using these Silva Method techniques of creative visualization, things like mirror the mind. Quite a testament. I make no claim. I'm not a physician. These were his statements. And there's a report called the Simonton report where we used to call it the attitudes of the cancer patient. You could read his book, Getting Well Again, where he goes into detail. He then mentored many famous people like Dr. Bernie Siegel, who happens to live here in Connecticut. But anyway, and more importantly, the point here, the message is, you've got this. You have everything you need. We all have human potential. It's just a matter of learning how to use it, learning how to cultivate and develop and enhance our own human potential. I tell my students at the very beginning of the class all the time, thank you for being here. You bring everything you need. What I'm going to do for you is help you, train you to use what you have. And we have a step-by-step proven method to do that. Now let's go a little bit deeper though. So imagination, making something up, considering, conceiving of the possibilities, visualization, the recall of what you imagined. The other step you want to add, however, for self-development, self-improvement, or for manifestation is to add a level of feeling. So, for example, some people have difficulty with their imagination. It's not so much because of their profession or their training, but it is because of their conditioning, what they're used to within the domain of their life, whether they be very technical or, for example, to meditate effectively, to use a dynamic meditation and access the alpha state. To do that, yes, it's easiest to close your eyelids, some deep breath. However, we need to be free of critical thinking, which is not a bad thing, to be free of logic and reasoning and rational thought. If there's any rational thought, any critical thinking, you're out of it. you're attuning to the subjective mode of consciousness. And the subjective mode of consciousness simply means make-believe, imagination, creativity. You can search through time, and the greatest inventions, the greatest breakthroughs in the arts and science and medicine have been first an idea that somebody had that was criticized. No way, how could we do it? Like Roger Bannister, everyone talks about. He says he's going to run the mile faster than 4 minutes. Oh, you'd kill yourself. Well, he did it, and within 6 months, many others, at least a dozen or more across the globe, did the same. The Wright brothers in flying. Steve Jobs when he was alive, and technology. Entrepreneurs understand, they see it all the time. Visionaries are idea people. Visionaries. However, what's important is it starts with the idea. Some have said it's 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration. You got to act on it. Figure out, okay, how can we bring this about? When Edison was working on the electric light bulb, he failed thousands and thousands of times. His attitude was, I'm getting closer to figuring it out. I'm learning what not to do. You get the idea? So when we can combine our creative imagination with logic, reasoning, the objective mode of consciousness, we function that much more effectively. We solve more problems. We're more innovative. We're more effective as human beings. And that's our intention. So one of the things throughout the Silva class, remember I said it's 40 hours of training, is it's important to cultivate. And I want you to start cultivating your creative imagination. We do an exercise on day number 2 called the memory pegs. Although in the long run it helps people to improve memory and learning, it's really there. In psychology it's called a mnemonic device because it helps people to train their thinking, their thought process, to activate, to cultivate imagination and to make associations. Another thing is we do what are called mental projection exercises. One's called the Fantastic Voyage, fairly new one. The famous mental projection, we do exercises in day 3 and day 4, where we're imagining ourselves in situations that logically seem ridiculous. But we don't have limits. Nowadays, they talk about the field of possibilities. There's no limit to what you can imagine. Our limits are self-imposed, or our limits may be on what we're willing to spend in terms of our time, our money, our resources to figure it out. And that's really the challenge. So start small, and here's a little exercise for you that I highly recommend. I'd like you to start doing this, and I'd love to hear from you. It's a game, the what if game. So wherever it's convenient for you and safe, sitting is usually best because you lie down, you run the risk of falling asleep. Close your eyes. If you're a Silva practitioner, enter your level, the techniques you've learned, the 3-2-1 method or otherwise. If you're a Silva Method practitioner, mirror the mind, use that technique. And what you're going to imagine is while in this quiet, relaxed state, 3 slow, deep breaths, feel some appreciation, helps to get you into a state of a positive state, a generous state, if you will, and then mentally rehearse. Imagine possibilities in your life. So you ask yourself, what would my life be like if my best self has emerged? And think of something important to you. If you like to play tennis, what would my life be like? What would my game be like if my best self emerged while I'm playing tennis? If you're in sales, what would my life be like? What would my level of success be if my best self emerges while I'm making sales calls? If you're a teacher, if you're a presenter, if you're a coach, if you're a therapist, in the morning, do this. Some nowadays call it priming. Prime yourself, get into a relaxed, quiet state, similar to meditation, but wait, what makes it dynamic, which is our thing in the Silva Method, we started this back in '66, is you can also think actively. First, get into the quiet, relaxed state, and then imagine the possibilities, positive outcomes for the day. What would my day be like if I bring out my best self? You get the idea? It's a simple little exercise. You can also use it to work on your life vision, a vision for your future, tomorrow, next month, next year, in the 5 to 10 years. Again, it hasn't happened yet. So what you're doing is conceiving the possibility. You're doing what some have called possibility thinking. You've got this. I believe in you, and I say you've got this because you have this ability within you. We all do. It's a matter of acknowledging it, recognizing it, and with the right training, focusing on it, developing it. And all it takes is a little bit of time. It's not a quick fix. So be patient with yourself and know that you've got this. Because you are far, far better than you realize. In fact, I think you're even better. Thanks for listening. Until the next time.